Okay. Make 1,000 videos on this topic. I don't know who would actually watch them. Everybody keeps asking me for them, but videos on Retroduction, the ancient lost art of the Pythagoreans, Neo-Pythagoreans, and the Neoplatonists, completely contrary to today's logical but linear induction and deduction. I can make 1,000 analogies to try to clear it up. I'll try to make a couple, but specifically, retroduction follows the logic, which is also both Indian, Platonic, and Egyptian, of via negativa, the path of the negative. And now it means being negative. It means following negation to arrive at synthesis of something. It's kind of like the way to get clean water is to scoop all the stuff out of it. See, like if someone didn't know what water was actually like, trying to get to the nature of water by removing things that were in the water, I mean, that's a form of retroduction. That's as meant via negativa, or apophaticism, hence the screen name that I actually picked. This is a negative synthesis, but negative synthesis in terms of objective negation. One cannot enjoin a self-negation paradox. Obviously, subject precedes object of negation, so nobody can negate themselves since subject precedes object of negation. This is also why there's no such thing as emptiness, for example. Emptiness is purely conceptual. No such thing as a shadow. Shadow is not a thing, it's an absence of light. Emptiness is purely conceptual in such that to state emptiness, one has to be witness to it being emptiness, and that is absolutely impossible, since if one were witness to it, then it was not empty, since it contained a witness. You could actually, or I could anyway, as well as other Neoplatonists, go down that line of logic endlessly, but I mean, via negativa, apophaticism. We're trying to delineate and differentiate denotatively and connotatively the difference between induction, deduction, and retroduction. One of the most simple analogies I can think of is someone threw a needle in a haystack and you had a herd of people trying to figure out. It's like, well, close your eyes. We're going to throw a needle in a haystack. And you threw it over there, and someone were to say, well, how are we going to find it? It's like, well, we know that you're a fat guy who doesn't have any muscles, and you probably couldn't have thrown it very far into the hay. And and they work on a calculator, the trajectory of a throw. And it's like, well, we heard your arm, we saw your arm move so far, and therefore I could work out the trajectory. Okay, induction. Deduction, Sherlock Holmes. Logical analysis of the facts that are known, are objectively knowable. Well, given the fact that a needle is metal and it probably fell into the hay, and given the trajectory where it fell, not too different. Induction, deduction, brother and sister. Retroduction is something entirely different. And then you got like a barefoot Billy Bob back there, with no book learning. And he says, well, I know how to find that needle. It's like, how you gonna? You got all these PhD people they're calculating out, they're calculating out where the needle fell in the haystack. And Billy Bob, I said, that needle made out of metal, ain't it? It's a pretty good analogy. At least I think it's kind of funny. They just set fire to the whole thing. Ain't gonna be nothing left but the needle. Retroduction. Arriving to the synthesis of, and that's only one very, very simplex analogy, arriving to the synthesis of, to the heart of the matter, of things that cannot be very easily or logically deduced. Specifically, this is where it becomes really important, where you cannot enjoin deduction and induction in metaphysical subjects. Because, there's, talk about the self-negation paradox and examining the examiner, the fundamental substrate of human being or existence or true metaphysical ontology. There's like a person, a soul-denying person, and there's old analogy. A soul-denying person, the body, of course, would be the house. The person leaves the house and they look in the window and there's nobody lives here. It's empty. There's no soul in here. It's like, that's because you just left the house and went outside, took a, we can't enjoin that self-negation paradox. Anyway, it's arriving at the synthesis of understanding and comprehension by non-objective induction or deduction. What we do, and this is, by the way, the term meditation is completely asinine. It does not refer to anything specifically. The ancient terms sati, smriti, or sati, by the way, is recollection. Anamnesis is a true recollection, but it doesn't mean recollection like remembering what you ate for breakfast yesterday, but it is deducing out or coming to subjective synthesis by withdrawing, by removing what it is not. And there are countless ancient analogies where one actually purifies gold through obviously heating up the rock, and they would place it in these special rock troughs, and the gold would actually leak out kind of like rainwater from the gold-bearing rock. They wouldn't actually have to break it up. They would smash it and they just heat it up, and it would just pour out. It would leach out like rain. You arrived at the synthesis of something through retroduction. Synthesis always occurs by actually negating what it cannot be. It's kind of like deducing the nature of a jigsaw puzzle simply by looking at the outer frame. By looking at the outer frame, we might not have any of the inner pieces, and the pieces might be gone, but we could actually arrive at what something is by looking at what it is not. That's really a crude way, without getting really hardcore into retroduction. One of the crudest ways of remember the little children's games where they'd actually have little dots, and you join the dots, and you had to join all the dots to figure out what the hell it is you were drawing. I mean, I'm not saying I was any special and different in that matter, but I just looked at the dots when I was younger, and I could see immediately what it was. I mean, some of them were obvious since it had eyeballs. You could tell it was a cat. Some of them were not so obvious, but I mean, simply by working out the negative of where the points of connection are versus the empty space of where no dots are, nor is there interconnected points to connect within that space, one is able to encapsulate a picture of what actually is there, but not by direct knowledge or episteme. This is actually the methodology of, and thinking is the wrong word, this is the methodology of noesis, which does not engage in the mechanism of empirical consciousness, which is induction and deduction. Retroduction is noetic. It is transcorporeal or noetic, and I don't care if you believe in that or not, but I mean, this is how the Aristotelian, of course I have not much worth value placed into Aristotelian philosophers, since Aristotle himself, while very intelligent and very wise, especially compared to modern day people, not Aristotelian at all, but this is how the Platonists, the Neoplatonists and the Pythagoreans and the Indians worked out things. The Indians called it negativa, or neti, not this, not that, which is what neti translates as. The ancient Prakrit term was manifest in several different ways. I translate ancient Pali. The actual via negativa to arrive at subjective synthesis is to first engage in objective negation. The most often repeated phrase in the ancient Pali, and these are voluminous volumes of the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima, Samyutta, and Gottara Nukudaka Nikaya, specifically the Suranapada, the Udana, the Iruvutaka, and the Sakatavagga Pali of the first book of the Samyutta Nikaya, is Isokaya Namisata, which translates, that's an ancient dead language, by the way. Nobody speaks it anymore, obviously. This body is not the soul. And of course, the self is to be differentiated out from the big self. We're talking about the empirical self versus i.e. the consubstantial self, the psychophysical self, i.e. the corporeal self with the true self, or the ontological self, i.e. the soul, i.e. the Atman, i.e. the Spiritus Sanctum. But the most often repeated phrase in the Pali, the ancient Pali, is Isakaya Namisata. But also specifically the via negativa, or the apophatic term, and modern Buddhists are completely ignorant about this fact because they are illiterate, unintelligent fools, is the term anatta. It is used in reference to 22 different things. Specifically, for example, and this goes to what via negativa, i.e. neti, i.e. apophaticism is, or retroduction is that it would be said over and over and over and over again. And you need to take notes. Like when something is said over and over and over again, not only is it important, it is meant specifically as a methodology in and of itself. So rupa nata, veda nata, sana nata, sankara nata, vinyana nata, isakaya namisata, namarupa natati. Which means forms, feelings, perceptions, impulses, empirical consciousness are not the soul, not the self. Anatta. Anatta, of course, is a qualifier. It is a neti via negativa basis to engage the dialectic, because retroduction is pure ontological noesis. It is not empirical or conscious, induction or deduction. Retroduction is wholly apart. This is actually called noble cognition. by I don't know, by Jakob, not Jakob Böhme, but by the guy that wrote the Periphasian, whose name escapes me. I've read the Periphasian twice, and it's found within the Periphasian, which is a really noble work. Anybody should read. It's incredibly enlightening. However, it is just Platonism from the perspective of a European. Some names of like authors like escape me. It's like people that I've met like 100 times, like their name will escape me. My mind is thinking about 1,000 things at once, and I forget about something that I know very well. Anyway, the author of the Periphasian, or Periphasian, talks about. So this is, I hope I didn't go too deep, but this is what Retroduction 101 is. Like, what is retroduction? Why is it so important? How is it wholly different or far superior to induction and deduction? Well, it is superior. It lets you arrive at highly logical, extremely intuitive, and very wise conclusions about things for which there is no objective analysis thereof. Like, you can't stick yourself underneath the microscope and examine yourself, right? Well, I guess you could if you, like, cut some skin off. I don't mean that way. I mean the self as meant as a whole, or being, or ontos, or in the ancient Pali it would be the purisha, the person, not the persona non grata, which is namisata. These are not declarative statements within the Pali, and of course they're found within the Greek as well. But it is a methodology of subjective synthesis through objective negation. This light form of retroduction is engaged by detectivists and other people that also engage mostly in deduction and induction. They'd be like, what's his face couldn't have stolen so-and-so because he's a cripple. He couldn't have like climbed up to the third window because he's missing both his legs. I mean, that is a form of induction, but it is also a really light form of retroduction. It is arriving to the synthesis of an answer through objective negation, but that's a really superficial and not superficial. It is a very word escapes me. Simplistic, and that's not even the word either. Simplistic way of arriving at the synthesis of the answer for which you seek. So I hope that's a light introduction to retroduction, and that is really light. It goes a lot deeper than that. But specifically, retroduction is the ontology of metaphysics, the ontology of answering metaphysical questions. Actually, that's what I should have said. The ontology of Noetic answering methodology, the Noetic answering methodology of arriving at metaphysical answers that is wholly above the sphere of induction and deduction. I hope that was simple enough. I hope I didn't, I think that's just a perfunctory, very, very simple analysis of retroduction, of which countless people have asked me to do that. But if our children had been taught this stuff in school, they'd be much more intelligent and being able to figure out things. This is also the premise retroduction of negative space, too. Detectives use this as well when they're able to tell a lot more by what someone doesn't say than by what they do. Like, they grill someone, like an interrogation room, for example. A stupid, simple person just listening to what a person says. The really smart one is engaging in a noetic form of synthesis answer forming by listening to the empty notes. Music is as much like a piano concerto, okay? There's no other musical instrument but a piano, right? The concerto, the masterpiece of music, Chopin, whoever it is, Bach, Mozart, is as much what is not present, when no keys are being hit, obviously, as it is. Same thing with binary on a hard drive, right? The zeros mean as much as the ones, right? The ones have no meaning without the zeros. 0, by the way, is not a number in ancient Greek. 1 is not even a number in ancient Greek. 1 is principle. It's not even a number. And 2 is also not a number in ancient Greek metaphysics. It's the euristostaias. 1 is a principle, and 2 is not a number in ancient Greek metaphysics. And 0 is not a number at all. You think, well, 0 is a number, I got a placeholder. No. When you talk about metaphysics, 0 is nothing. And nothing is not something. And it has no properties. Same thing with space. Space and 0 have a lot in common. because we always draw zeros and we think of 0 as a number, and 0 is nothing. Space is nothing. Space, as Nikola Tesla famously said, has no properties. And he's correct. And as attributes, like a shadow has attributes. Like if you stand in a shadow, you'll be colder, but a shadow is not a thing. A shadow has no properties. A shadow is the absence of light. Anyway, I hope this was a very, very, very simple, I hope it was simplified enough introduction to what is a retroduction. The ancient lost the metaphysics of Noetic answer for, well, it's actually the mechanism for answering things in metaphysics and monistic ontology. So, see, it's kind of an abstruse topic to make a video about. It's like this guy makes videos on camera stuff, and then he makes videos on field theory, and now he's making a video on abstruse Platonic ontology. He's boring. I don't know if he's boring or if he's cool. At least he's fat and ugly. Yeah, I get that all the time. It's like, geez, I never looked in the mirror. I couldn't figure out that was fat. I don't know people. I wonder how people think how stupid I am. Do they think I'm stupid? Yeah. And it's been one of those weeks, you know? It has been one of those weeks. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you like these videos, please click the link below, because I'm not shilling or shucking or selling anything, so any donation is warmly appreciated. Oh, God, I really mean that. Right now, I actually have $1 in my wallet. I got like 120 in the bank, but I have $1 in my wallet right now. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Totally true, by the way. Thank you. Goodbye.